I grew to trust patterns. More so than I would trust people, I would trust their behavior. 2025 is we're really in the era of the Jetsons. Just looking at the myriad opportunities there and leveraging the ease that we have now with creating digital twins or any other digital labor for that matter. It bothers me how easy it is and how much participation we don't have in our country. How your life plays out is based on the decisions you make or the trade-off that you make. Because I get asked a lot, like, how did you grow your business so quickly during COVID? Like, if you know what you want and what you want to go after, you go look at what that requires. You build your business around that. Because people don't realize just because you're qualified doesn't mean you're eligible. They need to learn how to present value versus just trying to sell their resume. Like being a business, your name is your brand. People need to understand that they're going to need more than one stream of revenue. You can't just be paying bills.
So I'd like to, for myself as well as the audience, understand a little bit more about your multidisciplinary background. You've woven together engineering, economics, AI, and community empowerment in a really compelling way. What was the spark that set you on this multidisciplinary path?
When I was a kid, I saw puzzles in everything, in math, even in like music. There was just putting a puzzle together to make a sound pattern. And then I started looking at patterns, and I grew to trust patterns. More so than I would trust people, I would trust their behavior. Like instead of saying, "Oh, I don't, trust anybody," I wouldn't allow my ability and capacity for trusting to be impaired because you lose threat assessment capacity. Like everything's a threat or nothing's a threat. You don't really start gauging things properly when you don't trust. Like when you don't trust your training in martial arts, it's not going to serve you anyway. Or, whatever. So I started trusting people who lied to me to lie. I started trusting people who I saw steal to steal. I started trusting people who were consistent in anything to be consistent in that thing. And I started practicing developing other skills. I saw people making money and I wanted to do that. So fast forward, still entrepreneurial. My mom's always had like something else going on because her grandparents were entrepreneurs. When I turned 16, one of our neighbors said, "Hey man, you want a job? We're shorthanded." I was like, "Sure." So I became an apprentice in air conditioning and heating and HVAC when I was 16. They had this process where they would train you for 90 days. And if you developed a skill set within that 3-month period, they would either hire you on permanently or they'd find you something else to do and just let you go altogether. So I started doing that for myself. I would work on something for 90 days. And if it worked, I would move on and, keep, we didn't really have a way to automate at the time, but you can keep a process going by teaching other people, duplicating yourself, whatever. It's like you get a paper out and then you can expand those paper routes by getting other people to run the routes. Once I started my own company in my 20s, I still had a foot out of the workforce, because I didn't really know how to go about, full on corporate structure legally. And so I was a sole proprietor for a while. I didn't know about, insurances like the group insurance I didn't know it was cheaper to get insurance through my own company than through a job. But as I learned, I kept doing jobs to expand my own business because I didn't have the money for mergers and acquisitions, but that's what I, eventually wanted to do. Still, am working on doing. But I studied Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Benjamin Graham, Napoleon Hill, and I didn't just read books, I used them. So I did the things in the books. I still do. Became a Berkshire shareholder. I got B shares. I've never been able to afford the Class A stock, not yet. I'm working on it. And, going to the events and being in the rooms where they're actually talking about the things that I wanted to do. And I would work on those things for 90 days at a time. If I saw that I needed to learn something about the environment for logistics or whatever, I would take 90 days, quiet everything else, and focus on what I needed to know for that next 90 days. So I do that every 90 days. And that's how I ended up with post-doctoral work in 5 industries, essentially. It's just focusing on what I need to know for the next 90 days and then mapping and rinsing and repeating that process every 90 days. It became a best practice, for lack of a better way to put it. And eventually, I ended up training some researchers who had PhDs in the development of things because they hadn't built anything, but they've done a bunch of research. And I was like, and it changed my perspective on academia. I grew a newfound respect for it because back when I was a kid, I was like, if I'm not going to school for law, medicine, or architecture, there's no reason to go. And I'm saying this is in like my mid 20s. I'm very adamant about that now, and not only to that extent for like competency's sake. It's like if you're not solving a night, like if you don't have a problem you want to solve that isn't being solved, that hasn't been solved yet, it doesn't make sense to go for those 3 reasons. Like unless you want to build a better bridge or something that's more, resistant to the elements and storms, why become an architect? If you don't want to, like my daughter is going into medicine because she wants to decrease the maternal mortality rate. So she's going to be an OB. She listened. She graduated with from high school with a weighted GPA of 4.632.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. She's, I don't want to say obedient because she's definitely not that, but she pays attention. Um, and that's just, attention to detail and almost making, empiricism and practice, a religious, almost, for lack of a better word, it's like a religious practice. It's like a right to get up every day, be grateful, remember that you don't actually have time, and practice those things that are going to get me to that next quarter and have the performance that I want to see. And they started calling me Dr. Adams because I was training them back to that. And I trademarked the name Dr. Malcolm Adams. Actually going back to school, the government's going to pay for it. They've agreed to do that through a program from 1890. The USDA was like, yeah, we'll pay for anything that you're doing related to agriculture. So I'm going to do agricultural economics because I'm already doing that. I could just they told me that I would be able to repurpose a lot of my work for like life experience credits because I had a non-traditional pathway. They accept non-traditional credits at some institutions. Found a good one. We've actually done some work together. So they know that, and it's one of those ones where you need letters of recommendation. So like PhDs that I've worked with and they've seen my work, they're giving me the letters of recommendation, so on and so forth. So I am going to go back and do it, not just for the sake of like marketability, but self-enrichment, the relationships, access to technology, assets, resources, labs. It'll help me get my own lab certification. It'll help with SBIR and STTR technology transfer. I kind of kept my first patent to myself because it's like my first invention / baby. And I just really don't want to share any ownership of that one. But as far as everything else that I'm creating, I'm wide open to, collaboration and sharing equity and sharing the patents and stuff like that. So they've been really happy about that. Ever since the Georgia Institute of Technology has agreed to work on one of my initiatives with me directly. Other academia has, or academic institutions have, that are like R1, R2 universities. They have definitely stepped forward and wanted to, join in the fight. IBM and a few other industry titans have not only like accepted me as a partner and have agreements with me, they're pushing me to become, a higher tier partner. So that's been advantageous. And just, throughout that entire, the journey here to now, learning what I needed to know about money, I ended up getting, awarded globally in economics and finance during COVID. And just quietly working, I got a U.S. Senate commendation last year for some stuff that I was doing in the state of Georgia that I wasn't aware anybody was even watching. But it's good to be recognized. But at the end of the day, I would much more prefer like direct support. You know, it's very expensive work because it's a heavy load. Like it's a big problem that needs fixing. We have soil health issues. We have food insecurity in general, and then because there's a lot logistically, like even with not having a workforce in agriculture like we need, not having enough drivers, to deliver once things are harvested, and people not realizing that agriculture isn't just food and clothing; it's everything you can touch comes from the ground. So whether it's building materials or you're mining minerals, even like it's all agribusiness. So I've really been working hard to push
So
agribusiness.
like airplanes are an ag business in a sense.
Yes, aerospace. That's
Wow.
how we got the aerospace relationship because not just the things that they build things out of, but spacecraft production. People didn't know that astronauts had to eat for some reason, but and then they even have people who specialize in the type of light that you need to use in space because there's no light in space. Like you're not getting any direct sunlight. There's
Right.
no photosynthesis happening in space. So, the way that the systems need to be built and irrigation and just, all those different things. Taking
Could
those
you?
3 months again for each process just
Mhm.
kind of help with the becoming, not, I wouldn't say an industry leader in each industry, but becoming competitive in agribusiness, transportation, distribution, logistics, engineering, advanced manufacturing, and then aerospace for commercialization.
You mentioned your daughter's focus, and you might be familiar with the Pomodoro technique. They help people like break up larger studying uh, tasks by like having it incremental, like with 20-minute intervals or something like that. I think there's something really interesting about this 90-day approach you're talking about because it's not like a whole year, it's not decades if you don't want it to be, but it's just focus on something for a season, see what in there might resonate with you, what innate or active skills you might have that you could apply to that field. And you're bringing what I like to call outsider insights. So you're not blinded by belonging necessarily. You're coming in and just looking at like what is. You don't have a sunk cost fallacy. You're just like, this is what I see, and it gives you license to kind of try things, and then you might find that you have an impact. Like you said, in Georgia, you were doing some work and you didn't realize that it was novel and being watched and rewarded. So I think that's really interesting how you're able to um, uh, just kind of try different things and be basically lean into your polymath kind of nature. Could you talk a little bit about how you're using AI to support sustainable farming at scale?
Absolutely. Everything from, of course, this is the IoT aspect, everything from data retrieval to resource concern, addressing like nutrient delivery, water management, soil health itself. It's been a real plus as far as putting soil health management plans together, conservation planning. Um, we're able to do it a lot. It's more efficient, but it's also more effective because there's a correctness that we're able to achieve at a higher rate than it would have been when we were going out scooping samples of dirt. Now we can use drone technology to map moisture and track, chemical use and things of that nature versus having to send specimens, yada, yada, yada. It's like now the agentic AI tools help us deliver the information more quickly, receive the information more quickly, and uh, create and provide the solutions more quickly. And it's really been uh, advantageous.
And you're using Watson.
Yes, Watson X Orchestrate, IBM Maximo and Visi. Uh, we're actually launching a product that is so I create I developed the tech, like the agent, and then we integrated with IBM, a relative IBM product. And then that co-collaboration deepens the relationship with IBM. We're able to put the product then on their marketplace as well as, so we can license it with our ESA contract versus having to try to do it on our own. And you're not going to compete with a 130-year-old tech company. Like, that's just not going to happen. So it just made sense. Plus, we save a lot of money entering these startup programs and having these partnerships. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent and very grateful for IBM taking, you know, my ideas and projects seriously and forming this relationship to allow us to, use their tools and have the partnerships with their higher tier partners to give us access to data centers and things like that, so that we can, get to POC and then to market.
Could you talk about what goes into making a digital twin?
So digital labor is, at the same time, it's one of my favorite things. It's not, because you can't teach anything to think like you. It's just, you can train, robotic process automation model. There's no coding involved. We're just copying and pasting X code for buttons on websites, or, creating processes like action uh, sequences so that it knows what to log into. It has the login information, yada yada yada, and there's no development involved. It's really no code, low code uh, at this point. So there isn't a whole lot that goes into it anymore. Like, it's, 2025 is, we're really in the era of the Jetsons. We're able to go in and in about an hour create an agent or a digital twin, and then have it manage, the system, in things that would take months take minutes now. And it's unfortunate for, you know, individuals and career seekers and, aspiring professionals who aren't paying attention, because we've been in, we've had urban air mobility and, drone delivery for, I want to say, 8 years solid. We've had, large language models since 2014. And everybody just started talking about them last year, and I realized, like, hey, we've been doing this since 2015. We've been dealing with this since 2018, 2019. It's just like with industrial cannabis. We got our first license in 2019, the year after, after it was fully no longer a class A felony to do interstate commerce with it. And we didn't even grow from flower. We still don't, because I'm not as interested in consumption as I am, bioplastics, biofuels, uh, or biodiesel rather, and textiles. The Department of Defense is looking for ways to make soldiers less detectable under thermal optics. So they have opportunities that go out on research.gov, where you can go and work with a college to get funding for that research, and then, they'll help you with commercialization once you have your proof of concept. So it's just looking at the myriad opportunities there, and leveraging the ease that we have now with creating digital twins, or any other digital labor for that matter, is, I don't know, it bothers me how easy it is and how much participation we don't have in our country.
What do you think would change that?
Language, like, we really need to shift people's perception of what fun means, or shift the attention away from entertainment as much as, because it's so away from education and economics and entrepreneurship that entertainment has become the thing that people compete for.
Do you think it was low hanging fruit?
No, I think it
How do you think we
was.
wound up here as a society?
feelings,
Feelings.
people liking to feel better about their lives, or escapism, not having to think about what is actually their own fault. Um, people will,
Service,
yeah,
community,
yeah,
sacrifice,
you
uh,
know,
discipline.
somebody told me at a conference recently, a buddy of mine named Lawrence Lockhart, he's one of the top developers in the world as far as I'm concerned. He said, people talk about problems and uh, the work. He said, but you just do the work and pop out with work done to solve the problem, so that when you do say something, you've already backed it up with having done your part. I said, yeah, it's like complaining about politics, but you haven't read a policy and did not vote. Like you haven't proposed anything and cited the actual policy to, you know, defend the argument of what is wrong with the policy,
Mhm.
to then propose an alternative to change, U.S. code, or even at the local level. I mean, heck, most people can't tell you who their school board superintendent is without Googling, or who's on their board of commissioners in their county. But they
Mhm.
have a problem
Probably true.
with politics. Like, it's like, what,
Speaking
if
of
you,
digital,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, it's like if they stop attempting to numb whatever it is, with, the Diddy trial, or reality TV, or sports, whatever they're arguing about and knowing the most about, because they even argue about who the best basketball player is and just all this weird stuff. And it's like, dude, if you would take that energy and time and thought and money and invest it into the things that you're attempting to medicate with these things over here, those problems would probably solve themselves. But
There's always a cost, I think. Might be one of Newton's laws of thermodynamics. And you can either pay it up front, or you can pay it on the back end. And typically when it's on the back end, it's more expensive, just like compounding credit card debt. So it's I can certainly relate, like anyone, to wanting the easier, the lower cost item, have it now, the instant gratification. But if you can kind of get over that initial discomfort, I think that you have this compounding effect of more ability, more agency, and things kind of work. You need that tension. I was going to ask earlier, speaking about digital twins and agriculture and simulations, like testing out different scenarios in rapidly. It's funny you brought up politics, because I was talking to a colleague recently who asked, like, why can't we like just have these simulations of how things would play out, so that we don't have to actually play it out in real life, where you and I was curious, do you think that politicians are already doing this, or do you think that they will do it in the near future?
do I think that people who are among the 44 plus million adults in this country that don't read past a fifth grade level are running simulations? Absolutely not. Like, they're not testing anything or theories or scenarios, or they're, I mean, look at the Brookings Institute fellows. If you watch a hearing, you'll see some college student hand them data and they can't comprehend it. It's always the previous administration, and then they can't ever cite the policy. They just say the previous administration's policies. Yeah, which ones? HR what? Like, what are we talking about? And like, no, absolutely not. They're not doing it, but researchers are. There are people who work in big data. There are quantitative analysts. There are qualitative analysts. There are people who are out doing science. Even in the vein of political science in that vertical, where they're running simulation scenarios for outcomes. Even those that aren't the most technologically sound. You got guys from the '60s that are still around that are like, if this then that, and they're whiteboarding and chalkboarding, and hey, if this dude or if this lady or this person becomes, or if this party gets the majority of the House, if this party gets the majority of the Senate, or if these people win these states, or if there's a lot of that happening. But the people, I've been on the state ballot twice, and I learned so much about what people don't do who go into these positions because they don't typically know anything about policy. Like they're just the last person that after they redistricted who I opposed. There was nothing on his website about doing anything for his constituents. It was all about making somebody else's life harder that they might not like. And to this day, he's been in office. He hasn't done a thing for anybody. There's no jobs created, no food system for the food deserts in his district, nothing. But um, he worked in somebody's office who worked for somebody that people support, even though there's no logical reason to. So it's like, um, you control what you can. I can control my response, as well as the others who do actually, analyze not just big data, but things at a local level to ensure that they can, be of impact, positive impact, and produce favorable results for their immediate community, and then if they're able to expand the country at large.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up something that seems pretty common in politics, which is kind of complaining about someone else's character or someone else's actions, which on the surface, it seems like, oh, I want to know where the bad things are. Like, please point out the bad things for me. But if you break it down, like, I think with our limited capacity, some two things can be true at once. We have limitless capacity in some sense, and in some other senses, if I'm telling you how to feel about Jack or Jill, what I'm not doing is probably doing the work. Um, and so when you speak about patterns earlier, that's a pattern that I've kind of, or a heuristic that I've tried to adopt more recently, trying to focus my energy not on trying to convince you how to think about someone that has hurt my feelings, and just doing the work.
You've said two things. And this isn't a plug, but I wrote a book called OCD, and that stands for Opportunity Cost Discounting. Heuristics, and just kind of working back through pieces of the conversation, and cost for decision making, because everything that decide, how your life plays out is based on the decisions you make or the trade off that you make in the instance. Um, that is probably one of the most vital things. Like, how they have those old adages like, oh, the devil's in the details, or the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was proving that it didn't exist by being obvious. Like, this dude's obviously looking around picking out stuff to say. Um, it's not a matter of capacity or access. Congress.gov has been publicly accessible as long as I can remember. Yeah, you could go see who authored, introduced, sponsored, was a detractor, was a proponent, voted for, said nay. You can see who was in office, where things got hung up, whether it passed or got filibustered, or got hung up at the Senate. Or we can see this stuff, just people's attention. It's like I told somebody the other day. I said, if you don't have your district General Assembly website in your browser history, don't talk to me about politics, because I'm not going to entertain it. That's publicly, it's free. You can just go to congress.gov or your district general assembly website and put in a keyword and see who had anything to do with what you wanted to what would serve you happening, or who had something to do with it not happening. It's plain as day, but people are too busy watching television.
I think we want the easy out. I think we want to sound or feel informed because we watched or heard a celebrity or a news anchor, either with or without air quotes, say something. And enough, like a critical mass of people that look the part, sound the part, and to be fair, maybe are the part in certain contexts, are saying the thing. And
Are
so
a
we
part of the
feel
problem.
or that we feel like we're like, I think there's a tribal element to it as well, like for social safety.
Hey
We feel
man,
like we're
tribalism got a whole continent colonized. So, two. Just historically, two continents were conquered because of tribalism being a practice. So, because when you're working in silos,
mm,
it doesn't work out. Like, without that radical collaboration, uh, you don't have neighbors that can help you fight.
right,
And they won't get up. It's like, oh, well, it's not us, so what does it matter? And then you're next. Like it's
right.
they're just it's at the same time everybody thinks they're separated by something. They're all fish in a barrel at the end of the day.
You've launched workforce development programs through Adams Career Academy. What does a future-proof job training program look like?
The approach is number one to make sure that they're getting industry recognized credentials because things do get phased out or don't carry any weight as far as in-demand jobs would be concerned, and also understanding that they need to learn how to present value versus just trying to sell their resume. It's like being a business. Your name is your brand, and you have to understand how to brand. They don't realize that all of their branding needs to be streamlined. So every social media platform you're on, it needs to be just like your resume. Everything, the voice in your emails, the way you communicate, the way you articulate, it all needs to be streamlined, because if somebody sees that you have messaging, you're going to be inconsistent, and you're not going to help their company save money and make money, as well as like having that business approach to it, understanding that they're doing business development, not networking. They're creating an ecosystem, not a peer group necessarily, because you want to deal with people who can actually help you get the jobs. They're not engaging with the recruiters directly or the hiring managers directly in most instances. And that's something that they need to do. They need to leverage the power of LinkedIn, for instance. And we make sure that they have their LinkedIn set, like, structured, like, hey man, you want to work? Make sure that that's what your branding states. Make sure that you're giving numbers. What you're not just that you earned a Sigma, a Six Sigma, green belt, black belt, whatever, but you're able to actually, prove that you can lean out by just storytelling with data. Write. Like, it's just like journaling. You need to write out your thoughts and ideas and capabilities to at least have proof of concept for your service, and your ability to do a job, and to create your own job. There's been instances where I've been able to help somebody get off of a factory floor and end up in an office because the company didn't have the training that they needed, but this person had been on the floor for like 13 years. And it's like, why aren't you at a desk creating trainings on PowerPoint and Excel? Oh, I don't know how to use those. Okay, that's an easy fix. Like, let's take you to YouTube University really quick so you can learn how to use PowerPoint and Excel, and then you can put these things together. And then we have so many other tools to help now. So it's really building the individual like a business versus just helping them get a credential and then introducing them to somebody like, just a warm handoff to a recruiter.
I like how you take this first principles approach to everything. You like, oh, you're missing this Excel. Like, we'll fix that real quick. Instead of like, oftentimes I see people like this being looked over because it's like, oh, they don't fit the perfect mold onto the next, and it's like with a little bit of support here for an instant, you could have exactly what you're looking for. And you see that, I think, as I see it, from your outsider lens, being able to focus on different things, and see what you're good at, and then seeing the fruits of your labor there, probably incentivizes you to continue trying that out. And so it's nice to see that in the mix.
The scientific method will never not be the best approach to solving any problem. Doing a SWOT analysis is, you can do that really quick by seeing what somebody produced and what they didn't produce, like what they've done, what they haven't done. So you can see what they're good at and what they probably don't know how to do at all. When you look at entrepreneurship and people starting businesses, because I get asked a lot, like, how did you grow your business so quickly during COVID? Because I actually made my original tech company a brand of my R&D firm, just, an arm of it, and decided to go full on with R&D September 14th, 2020. By November, I had my first government contract. They were like, how'd you do that? I said, well, I structured the company around the requirements for the grants and contracts that I was eyeing. Like, if you know what you want and what you want to go after, you go look at what that requires. You build your business around that versus starting a business and then having to backtrack and double work and redo things after you see what the requirements, qualifications, like, and where the eligibility is. Because people don't realize just because you're qualified doesn't mean you're eligible. Like, I'm qualified for NSF lineage, but I'm not eligible because my technology didn't go through a university. So it's
Soon to be fixed.
yeah, definitely. Definitely that.
What would a moonshot public-private partnership look like for food security or a sustainable agriculture?
Cargill, uh, local municipality as an agency, like, state agency, and the community. People forget to do business with the community that they're doing business in. People can register their homes as farms. All you need is, I think it's like 435.6 square feet. A hundredth of an acre can be registered as a farm. You can grow in your backyard, on your porch, and you can wherever, because you can use a tower to grow, or you can have high beds or raised beds, a high tunnel, low tunnels, whatever. You can grow. Uh, as long as you're delivering, you're putting the produce out or selling it. You can create a co-op right within the neighborhood. Everybody can put in $5 to the co-op, so now you have that credit union style co-op grocery, and of course, incorporated, and everybody's getting paid to feed themselves as well as sell food to the government. It's not rocket science.
What does success look like for you in 10 years? Is it policy reform, scaled up smart farms, a global apprenticeship system, or something else?
All of it plus an exit. Like, I'm tired, man. But I got to get it done. Definitely, of course, my individual net worth being solid for, my estate to continue, whether something happened to me or not. Definitely want a library with my name on it, or, an actual physical school with a library attached. So I'm more concerned with a library than a museum or a school, because people need to have access. I mean, they already have access, but because there aren't enough people like starting them, keeping them going, funding libraries, they're dwindling, they're fizzling out. It's almost like the movie rental places that went away. Like, we don't have movie
Yeah,
gallery and
that's sad.
Blockbuster anymore. We don't want our library systems to go away.
Definitely not. When I
Uh,
travel, I love going to libraries. Just the atmosphere of the space. It's almost like it has a spirit, and the architecture, and just the community being there, all generations, just reading, and yeah, it's a really nice experience that the movie rental places didn't quite have. Though I do have some fond memories of those. I think the library would be a great tragedy to lose those.
Absolutely. I did not. Oh, and yeah, definitely licensing my technologies and just getting a percentage off of them while I'm engaging in authorship and traveling and speaking. Like, I really, and I'm probably never going to fully retire, you know, but I definitely want to be in my mergers and acquisitions soft retirement era. within 10 years.
Yeah, I've heard some. I used to be a tour guide in Japan primarily for several years, and a lot of my clients were kind of right at the threshold of retirement. Like most of them didn't retire the way that I understood the definition of retire. It was more doing things on your terms. I think if you can find a balance between living life on your terms, you might not need to escape it as much and sit on a beach and do nothing. You can sit on a beach and do a lot.
The work that needs to be done in order to do that is actually creating something to balance on. Like people will say like work life balance and all these other things balance, but not realizing like what it takes mechanically and within the realm of physics to balance. Like they're leaving out a lot of language. So they don't really create that foundation and then that, that platform. They don't have a platform. They haven't staged their life situation to where they have something to balance on. They're tightroping, the entire time, trying not to fall out of line, or most people are an ankle twist away from being homeless. You got to work for 3 weeks. That short-term disability runs out. You're already in debt to your ears. You can't work. You can't pay for the roof over your head. Next thing you know, your family is needing help from crisis services or something like that locally, which is most likely going away for at least 3 years. And the people need to understand that they are going to need more than one stream of revenue. You need more than one income stream. It can't just be some thing that you can't just be paying bills if you're going to. And it does take taking that hour or two, 3 days a week to learn over the course of 90 days. Like people need to invest that time and attention in themselves and what the life that they want to live. Like they say, create a life that you don't need a vacation from. So.
The kind of metaphorical country north of you might be damming up the river that you've relied on for generations, to use an analogy with income streams. And so, yeah, it's definitely a good idea, I think, to diversify your portfolio, as they say. I have a couple of, or a few rapid fire questions for you. What's one tool or tech you can't live without in your work?
The internet at this point. Microsoft 365 and, the things that come with that, VS Code, things that give me the ability to build technology wise. Like I don't need a plow anymore, but I definitely need a licensed drone operator. It's not that I wouldn't be able to get it done, but it would take a long time to accomplish things and achieve not only personal goals, but our business goals as well.
What's a book or thinker that changed the way you see the world?
Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, without even having to think about it. Outwitting the Devil is a book to save my life.
What's a mistake that taught you something essential?
Trying to save everybody.
What advice would you give a young engineer or economist wanting to make a real impact?
Focus on making and stop listening to people who aren't doing it.
Where can people get in touch with you and follow along with your work?
I'm on Google. LinkedIn is a great way to communicate with me. I'm very responsive there. I pay attention to Twitter, but not as much as LinkedIn. I rarely use Instagram. So I'll definitely say that just reaching out to me via LinkedIn is probably going to be their best bet.
Got it. Well, thank you, Dr. Adams. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, David.